Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. Really excited to have you here. We've got a great presentation, actually live demo today. And we've got Kostev from Paradime, who's going to be telling us a bit about their platform and a bit about how they've built an integration with Spectacles and really how you can solve your CI needs across a very common set of tools in the data stack, DBT plus Looker. So I'm really excited to hand over to him. He'll do a proper introduction of himself in a second, and he'll tell you all about the work they've been doing at Paradime. And just before I hand over to him, if this is the first time you're joining one of these webinars, we run these almost every other Wednesday. Our schedule's gotten a little off at the moment. It's been a couple in a row, and then we've got a 2-week break now. But we run them every other week. They're to get the Looker community together to just talk about things that are interesting to Looker developers, Looker admins, sometimes with partners like today, sometimes with companies that are using Looker and just doing really cool things. That's the case of the webinar we have in 3 weeks' time. We've got Mariana Fernandez from GetGround. Really excited to have her join us. She will be talking about a tool called Optician, which they have built to sync tables and particularly definitions from the warehouse into Looker. They kind of like the problem we're talking about today. You're often managing these things across DBT and Looker, and they can get out of sync from each other. Mariana and the team at GetGround have built a really cool solution to that, and so she'll be joining us in 3 weeks' time. That event isn't quite live yet on our website or LinkedIn, but it will be in the next couple days. So keep an eye out for that, and you can put 5 p.m. UK, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on September 4th in your calendar. That'll be going live then. And on that note, I'm going to hand off to Kostev. I will be back on for a little bit, and then I'm going to rejoin at the end for the Q&A. So if you have any questions as you see our presentations, as you see the demo, please just drop them in the chat, either on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you're watching. Drop your questions, and we'll make sure we try to get them answered at the end of the webinar. And so on that note, Kostev, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Dylan. Thanks for having me here as well. And love to be speaking to the whole audience about how connected pipelines or data pipelines using DBT and Looker can be continuously integration tested with both Paradime and Spectacles now. So very quickly, what Paradime does is we are an operating system for analytics where ultimately we help organizations supercharge their analytics while saving cost. And we do that in a variety of ways. We accelerate your development using our editor. We accelerate your orchestration, CI, testing, and CD using Bolt. And we enable active and passive cost monitoring and cost saving on Snowflake, BigQuery, and a few other warehouses through our monitoring solution, Radar. Today, we are going to talk about testing, and we are big fans of Looker and big fans of DBT. And a lot of our customers were using DBT and we're using Looker, and we built this integration with Spectacles to give our customers and users a way to continuously test their integrated pipelines as it spans from DBT and Looker. So how do we do that? So I think I'm going to talk very quickly through the high-level problem that we are trying to solve here, and then we can go through. We'll go through a live demo of how we are actually doing it in real life. So in Paradime, we have what we call a cross-platform lineage, and a lineage that spans from the DBT models all the way to your Looker data products. So we connect with your LookML as well as your Looker APIs, and we automatically build out your complete DBT to Looker lineage across your Looker views, explores, models, looks, and dashboards. So once you connect Looker to your Paradime workspace, we build this complete end-to-end view for you. Now, what that means also is that what we wanted to build is how can we build continuous integration testing now when you make changes to your DBT models? How will that have an impact on your Looker data products? And then we integrated with Spectacles for some of our customers because we also wanted to make sure that they are able to continuously test also their lookml models. So because these two code bases are living in two separate worlds, we wanted to make sure how we can do this end to end as you make code changes. So what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? The main two problems we are trying to solve here is that when you are making changes to your DBT code, how does it impact your Looker views? Because that's the main point of connectivity between your DBT layer and your Looker layer. So that's the question that we were grappling with. How do you know the impact of DBT changes on Looker views? Separately, then the next part is, how do you know if the current LookML is actually compatible with your linked DBT models? Because Looker views might be looking for fields that don't exist anymore, and so on. So those were the high level problems, and many organizations, the teams that are working on DBT are not the teams that are working on the Looker side. So your Looker repository, LookML repository, might be going through changes in its own life cycle. Your DBT repository is going through changes in its own life cycle. So how do you make sure that they are in sync? And if they aren't, how do you get visibility into that as part of your development process? And this is where continuous testing or CI testing using Paradime and Spectacles comes into the picture. Within Paradime, and I'm going to show later on as we move into the demo, within Paradime, we will tell you, as part of your DBT model changes, what is the downstream impact on your Looker views and your Looker dashboards, explores, and so on. So, and we will do that at a column level. So if you are renaming columns, you are deleting columns, we are able to parse that with our own proprietary parser to tell you what is going to be the downstream impact without relying on any logs and other events, purely through static analysis of how your code is written. And then you will run, as part of your CI, your Spectacles test suite to tell you which parts of your LookML is actually now breaking because things have changed or things have been modified. So that's how the whole thing sort of comes together, because these two parts live in two different worlds. And with the integration we've built with Spectacles, we're bringing that continuous integration and testing across two different systems. Awesome. I think I'll change to Paradime, to my other screen. Awesome. Cool. So to kick things off from a demo perspective, I think what we'll do is we will go through a code change within Paradime, and we will see what is the downstream impact of that code change on DBT and Looker layers. Before we do that, we'll first cover how you can set up the integration, and then we'll go into the actual work of it. Dylan, do you want to quickly run through the Spectacles app to see how to find things and where things are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Kostav mentioned, this integration works across Paradime and Spectacles. You need to have an account for both in order to test it all. Unlike some of the other Spectacles integrations, this one gets kicked off by Paradime. So the actual controlling of the trigger of the test happens on the Paradime side, but you still need to come into Spectacles and create a suite and kind of define, hey, here's all the things that Spectacles should run when Paradime is running its DBT checks. And so to do that, you'll click on suites in the top of the nav bar, and you'll often create a new suite, or we'll click into one of these. So we can click Paradime PRs, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of configs. So at the top, there's the triggers. If you were using something like else for this, like DBT Cloud, you would tick that trigger. But because we're using Paradime here, that all actually gets controlled from the Paradime side. So you don't need to touch the triggers at all. You can control Slack notifications if you want. But the most important bit as we scroll down is the actual validators. So obviously the most important one when you're running DBT checks is the SQL validator. You want to make sure that you're not breaking any SQL in Looker as a result of your DBT change. And so this is one that for this integration and for anyone testing DBT with Spectacles, we highly recommend you turn on. You can test all your explorers as we've done here with */*, or you can pick a subset. You can run it in fail fast. There's a whole bunch of configuration, and we've got a bunch of docs on that, so I won't go through all of it now. But at a high level, SQL Validator is one you're definitely going to turn on. And then the other one that you might want to have turned on, though we're not for this demo as we scroll further down, is the assert validator. The other thing that can break in Looker as a result of changes to DBT is like expected values from an explorer. So maybe the SQL all runs, but the data has actually changed at the DBT level. And so you could run the assert validator there in order to test all the changes that are necessary. We then have a bunch of other validators. They're not going to be relevant for a DBT run. You can't break content from a DBT change. You can't break lookml from a DBT change. You can't create a lookml linting error from DBT. So typically, you create the suite. You configure Slack notifications if you want it. You turn on the SQL validator, maybe the assert validator, and you click save. And that's all you really need to do on the Spectacle side. Everything else then happens over on Paradime side of the integration, though you are going to need a couple values from Spectacles to set it up, as Costav will run us through in just a second.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan, for that color and that detail. So yeah, moving on from Spectacles, what you need is you will need the organization ID, you will need the project ID and the suits ID, and those are all available from the URL at the top when you are looking at the suites. And also what you will need is the API key. So in your settings, you can have the API key. So you will need that API key. And to set this up in Paradime, what you need to do is, so when you come into Paradime, you have the home screen, but you have, and there are a bunch of applications that you can use. We will look at Editor, Bolt. Those are the ones that we are going to look at today. And from a setup perspective, you go into account settings. So in account settings in Workspace, what you need to do is set up a few environment variables. So they are the suit ID, the project ID, the organization ID, the API token, and the Looker schema key and value. These are very specific to the suite that you are using. So if I look at the Paradime PR suite, you have the DBT schema user attributes that you would want to use for this for the CI part, so that every time a PR gets created, we are looking at the correct schema from an end user perspective. So you have the schema name key and you have the schema name value. So their DBT schema is the name of the key, and the value could be anything. We've used CI in this case. So from a setting up perspective, from a Spectacle setting up perspective, that's all you need. And then we will automatically trigger Spectacle checks as part of CI checks within Paradime. Now, how CI checks work within Paradime is that in Bolt, which is our scheduler, typically you would set up a CI job. So we have set up a CI job that runs every time a pull request is created. And what we are running here is that we are cloning DBT. We are making a list of files that have been modified, and whatever has been modified between, so we are using defer state here, DBT deferral. So whatever has been modified between the previous run and the current run, we would just run that. So from a test CI setup, that's all you need. You need to just set up a CI schedule within Paradime. Now, let's take our CI job for the moment. And we had a last run about an hour ago. And if we look at the PR, so let's go to the pull request. So this is the pull request that we are looking at. We have one change in, we have added a new column. We have changed the group by, and that's pretty much all the change that is there. There is Paradigm's column level lineage, there is no downstream impact of that change. We haven't identified anything. We have added a new column. So it's basically not breaking anything, and that column has not been used anywhere. And we also, if you look at all the checks, Paradigm lineage diff has finished with no nodes impacted. Turbo CI is our schema checks and tests. That has also finished, and Spectacles has also passed. So everything looks good until, and now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new change. So for that, we'll go to the Paradigm code ID. So this is where all the development in Paradigm works. And we are looking at a simple SQL file. And what we are going to do is we're going to rename a few columns. So we're going to take the order ID as, we're going to rename it as order UUID. And maybe we'll take status, and we're going to rename it as order current status. So notice here we have made two changes, and we are going to now commit and push these changes. So we use AI to write the commit message, makes it super easy, and commit and push, 2 clicks, done. We have now pushed the change to our remote repository. Now what's going to happen is that that's now going to trigger the schema checks and the spectacle checks on the back of this. So things are running already, and what you'll see here is that things are pending, and things will start running as it goes along. And this is the commit that I have just pushed. So what is happening? What happens under the hood is effectively we are kicking off a bunch of checks on the back of the changes that we have pushed. So let me see. And now spectacles, and what we can see here is that the lineage diff has passed, and what it is telling me is that order items now, because it has changed, now this has downstream impact at the looker level. So there are these views that are going to be affected. As a result, connected explorers, looks, dashboards. So by column level lineage diff, we are able to tell you what is going to be the downstream impact at a looker level because of changes that you are making at the DBT level. Now you can see spectacles checks is running as well. So this is the key part of lineage diff. We haven't looked at logs or anything, but we know from the connected lineage that we have, when you make changes to columns at the DBT level, what is going to be the downstream impact of that change all the way to your looker data products. And if you look at what we've done here is we've made these renames. So typically column renames, column deletions are breaking changes, and those are the most problematic ones when you are refactoring things. And now the CI for spectacles has also finished, and we can directly open a new tab and see. And in spectacles now, we've also identified that this order ID and status, so we are checking the SQL, don't exist, and that's also failed. So now imagine if in a world where you are making changes unknown to what is going on elsewhere, you would be able to see how you're breaking things, or your work is going to break things further downstream, and you avoid a data incident or some sort of cascading effect as a result of something like a simple column rename or things like that that can have a lot of downstream impact. And this view was not previously be possible. You typically make a change at the DBT model, you will run it, you will go and probably have to push it into production, not knowing what is going to further break downstream. And bringing the Paradigm CI checks as well as Spectacle CI checks, you cover all bases, and you've essentially shifted left all the problems that could actually happen further downstream later on, and you are much more in control of the entire change management and your pipeline compared to what would be possible before. So how to rectify this? What you do is you'd go into LookML. You can go into LookML. You can go and make changes into LookML. And you can see there is order ID and status. These probably should be named something else. And then you'd clear things up, or you'd create a downstream ticket for somebody else to fix it until you push your changes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty I've covered the whole pipeline from left to right, but essentially what you're seeing here is things being made super easy, super straightforward, so that you're no longer pushing making code changes that looks good. They're actually impactful, and they're not going to break something downstream.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Kostev. Really awesome. Oh, I turned you off instead of the screen share. There we go. Really awesome to see the integration in action, and to give everyone the ability to see exactly how it works. We've got one question in the chat already, and for those who are watching, if you do have questions, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, please drop them there. The first one's from Valentin, and he's basically said, like, very keen to hear how fast the dbt plus Looker SQL validation runs for very large projects. Are we able to trigger the validation for a dynamic scope of explorers, i.e. just the ones impacted by the dbt models touched? The answer today is no. The spectacle on this, and it's a spectacles thing, really. We do need to test everything, and we do as a result require a clone of everything, which Kostev showed in that CI job, that there was kind of like a clone at the top. There's definitely, and part of that, there's two reasons for that. One is we Spectacles, as of today, don't have the functionality to like know exactly which explorers are touched, and that is something we'll explore. And it's a thing that's possible. The team at Paradime have done it. You can do that column level lineage. So that's the first bit. Is this just like, it's not a piece of functionality that Spectacles has, but the second piece, which doesn't fully limit us, is that if you imagine that only a view that is a join and an explore exists, is changed as a part of a PR, you then need all the preceding tables in that explorer to also exist. And that doesn't stop limiting this to just a specific scope of explorers, but it is what requires the clone, at least for related things on the explorer side. So I don't think we'll ever be able to get away of the need for a clone on the DBT side, but it does seem reasonable that we could, in time, limit the scope to just a specific set of explorers. Now, we haven't seen particularly large runtimes on these, even for large projects. So there are obviously some very large ones where you run into some issues. And there are some things you can do to speed that up. But there is functionality coming soon that will allow us to, via the Spectacles API, control the explorers for a given run. And so given that Paradime does know the explorers that are affected, it's possible that, particularly in this integration, even more so than with dbt Cloud or things like that, that Paradime could control that run dynamically and do it. It's just not a thing that's available today.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because we can pass it on as an API feed, and then we control that. We can help that happen. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. If anyone else on the stream, please feel free to ask any questions. I've got, or I had one that's just totally, I've totally blanked on. Kostev, was there anything, as you guys have been talking about this integration with your customers? I know there's a handful of customers that had requested this integration. Is there anything that's come up in learnings that you guys might apply to other BI tools or integrations with, with Tableau or with Light, other tools that you guys support? Any kind of, obviously there's like not massive parallels, because Looker has a coding layer and these other tools, not all, but many BI tools don't. Interested to see kind of like what learnings you've taken from this process and might be applied in Paradime to other tools.
No, I think that's a great question. So we do see this. Even if you take Tableau, Tableau has this concept of calculated fields, and this calculated fields is what a lot of people are trying to move the logic from there into the DBT layer, because this calculated field is a mess. So having the column level lineage diff that goes all the way into the calculated field on the Tableau side has we've seen customers take advantage of that. I think some of the main learnings that we had is number one is speed. When you have 4,500 models in the DBT layer, or when you have we've seen customers between 200 models to 4,500, 5,000 models. And being able to do this computation in a very smart and quick way was one of the major performance criteria that we had to look at. The second bit is people have macros in DBT, and that's something that we had to had a very deep look into to solve for that. And that once you have macros, what does that resolve to, and so on. So we have to be very smart about compilation and things like that. And something completely unrelated but has actually been very helpful is we recently published our work with AWS on moving to ARM processors. So we basically, on Intel, this is impossible to do in a performant way, because Intel is not very good at multiprocessing and multi. So if I can compile in a multi-threaded way across very high processors, I can massively speed that compute up using better processor and better processing techniques. And that's something that we had to kind of do it from the ground up, find processors, good processors, you know.
That's really cool. That's very cool. That's awesome. Well, it looks like that may be all the questions we have today. So I just want to say, Kostav, a big thank you to you for joining. Really cool to see the integration. Really cool to see how it works end to end. I expect the audience will have got a lot of value from it. And yeah, I guess if people want to talk to you, if they want to explore Paradime, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Just DM me on LinkedIn, or go to paradime.io and get started. We have a 14-day free trial. We give you demo data and a sandbox environment to get started with, so you do not need to connect your own systems. So you can experience Paradime and onboard in less than 30 seconds and see what the application is able to do. And yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to help.
Awesome. Well, appreciate having you on. Yeah, as I said, really enjoyed it. And to everyone watching, thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for being a great audience. And we will see you hopefully in 3 weeks' time for our next webinar. In the meantime, have a great day and rest of your week. Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great day.